Well, hello to all of you amazing individuals out there, wherever you are and whenever you are. Hope you're having an amazing morning, afternoon, evening, and or night at any point by which you're watching this video. This is my Skirmish Season 7 first week list that I'm messing around with. Ended up taking third at the Armory that I had this last weekend out of 20 players. Incredibly exciting. I have been so hyped for Skirmish Season 7. You guys have no idea. The addition of having a sideboard in Blitz has been one of the biggest things, because a lot of people criticize Blitz for having the super big explosiveness. That still happens. You're still starting at 20 life, which in CC people call like literally like part almost like the danger zone stuff. So you're already like really tight on trading resources. But being able to have a sideboard and being able to use those cards in an effective manner to counteract other matchups, absolutely huge. Warriors traditionally have huge Kano problems, traditionally have illusionist problems by not just being able to run poppers. So super excited to be able to have that sideboard, and I'll be getting into the sort of text that I've done with that. This is still a Royal Kassai list. I'm still on that Crown of Dominion. We're still on the cash-ins. I'll get into that as we go through the list, but overall super excited. Ended up taking third. Lost my first match against another Kassai who was on the Valiant Dynamo build. Ended up doing the I wasn't pacing very well. They were pacing very well. It was a very good back and forth. I mean, Kassai v Kassai. One Kassai wins and one Kassai loses. Next match was up against a Dash, new player Dash. They were figuring out a lot of the things, but they were going all aggro. We were able to do the mid-rangey warrior plan of blocking with cards and then coming back with 2 cards and eventually having super explosive turns. Then went up against a Riptide and just ended up being able to outpace them as well. Riptide had some awkward draws, wasn't able to get the arrows in there, and it was very unfortunate from their side. Then went against a Benji. Benji was coming with unblockable damage, but we were just sending more damage back because, again, with the Royal build, we're actually trying to emphasize that every card we have we're able to build and push with, as opposed to being locked with cards that like, oh, we really want to block with this, but we can't. And then the last matchup was actually up against a Dorinthea Quicksilver Prodigy. Never went against that hero before. It was very interesting to see, but still did Royal Kassai things very, very good. So that was a bit of a quick report there. For those of you who just want the deck list, as always, you can just hop into the description down below to just get it off the site that I put it onto. It'll have everything there. You'll be able to see what it is, and you'll just be able to run and roll with it. But for those of you who are interested in hearing about a lot of like the theory behind what I'm doing with terms of the equipment layout, I'll be getting into that right now. So, as always, we are with our Kassai, the Centauri Sellsword, our 4 intellect, 20 health young hero. Second sword, each turn costs 1 less to attack with, and the beginning of the end step. If we attack twice, we will get copper for each sword that hit. And we always accompany it with our Centauri Sabers, the signature weapon of Kassai. If you want a refresher on some of the sort of baseline preliminary things of Kassai, go ahead and check my first profile. I'm going to be glossing over a couple of things and really trying to emphasize what about Skirmish Season 7 I've been trying to build towards and building around. So that's it for the initial hero and the initial equipment that we're walking out with. Going into the equipment suite, it's going to be a bit smaller because we're not just on full null rune having a million extra things to play around with, because we actually want those sideboard slots. So, headpiece, Crown of Dominion. We are still on this royal package, still love cash-ins, and as I'll get into later, cash-in drawing 2 cards in a sideboarding format is even more huge than what it was in before, where we're just trying to push bigger turns, because drawing into key sideboard cards in those matchups you try to sideboard them in is massive. It's one of the big things. For example, in Yu-Gi-Oh!, Pot of Prosperity is usually cited as being able to go 6 cards deep for a sideboard tech card. In Flesh and Blood, sideboard cards are still going to be good as sideboard cards. So Crown of Dominion, still running that royal package, love drawing cards with Cash-In, and Cash-In's going to be getting us other cards. Arms, Brageford Bracers for now. I haven't tried out Iron Song Versus yet. That's one thing that I'm interested in trying out, but I mean, it blocks 2, it sometimes pumps 1 extra damage. Iron Song Versus, it blocks 2, then blocks 1, then tries to threaten other damage. Like, seem very similar. I don't know if there's going to be huge differences between them, but I want to give it a shot. Courage of Bladehold, again, one of the biggest equipment pieces if you're trying to do what we're trying to do here with Kassai, because it allows the blood on her hands to be a 1-card turn. You have blood on her hands, you have 6 copper, crack them, crack Courage of Bladehold, get a massive turn. And again, with the royal package, I like being able to push lots of damage and push these power turns, or being able to have these powerful 1-card turns if we need to really be on the backswing. Again, that's why on the foot piece, we're actually going to see that I'm still on Refraction Bolters over Valiant Dynamo. Is it still a budget consideration? Yes. If you have the money, should you probably just do Crown of Providence plus Valiant Dynamo? Probably, because you're going to be able to have a lot more of that mid-rangey action and be a bit more flexible. But with the Royal Package, if we're leaning into that aggression, Refraction Bolters actually does a really good job of that. Because sometimes you need to play your cards in such a manner that you always have to be getting at least 2 swings or maybe 3 swings off in a turn. We'll get into 3 swings in just a little bit with some of the changes in the deck. But Refraction Bolters always gives you that go again. It makes so that the first off turn you would have, you can ignore that it's an off turn. You didn't draw a go again. You had a block with your go again. Whatever happens there, you can be like, you know what? I'm going to be pushing through. And it allows our pumps, when looking at the numbers in the deck, pseudo to count as a go again card. Still blocks for 1. Still gives that like extra ping if they're coming in for 4 off of a snatch. Block and then throw the Refraction Bolters in front of it. But it also allows you to push more damage if you have drawn up to more cards and you need to get more of those cards out of there. So in a lot more of this like aggressive, just really trying to damage them deck, I really like the Refraction Bolters. And I think in the Royal sort of build, it might be correct since you're trying to be more aggressive than the Valiant Dynamo version. But again, if you have the money for those, go ahead, give it a shot, and let me know what you think. Then the last 2 pieces of equipment, I am still on 2 pieces of Null Rune. I couldn't find enough that I wanted to have in the sideboard options to make me go down to 1 piece of Null Rune. Definitely need at least 1 piece for those Runeblade matchups and all of those Rune Chants coming in, especially for Vin's set that's now coming out. But if you have the flexibility, throw in that second piece, can help you better in the Wizard matchup. And, spoiler alert, Oasis Respites are in the sideboard. You can still trigger 2 pieces of Null Rune and Oasis Respite off of a blue pitch. So you're still going to be effectively blocking like 6 Arcane off of a blue pitch, which can be very good there. So that's it for our equipment loadout. Again, bit shorter. We're not on the Gallantry Gold anymore. We're not on the Helm of Sharp Eye out of the side because we want to have those slots for other things. Getting into the main deck configuration, which is a 47 card main deck, meaning we have built-in flexibility for what we want to bring in from our sideboard. And I'm going to start with the power cards of Kassai. So, 2 Blood on Her Hands, Kassai Specialization. This is the card that you're going to be killing people with. I'll go through it real quick, but again, if you want much more deeper dive, go check the other deck profile or check other people's deck profiles as well. So, 2 Blood on Her Hands. As an additional cost, sacrifice any number of copper, up to 6, because you can choose each mode up to twice for each copper you sacrifice. Give a sword +1, give a sword go again while attacking, or given a sword, it can attack twice per turn. If you have 6 copper, this card is a 1 card, because you crack Courage of Bladehold, 12 damage turn. Or, if you're able to use a blue pitch, as opposed to the Courage of Bladehold, it is a 2 card 12 damage turn, which is better than 2 for 6 stuff. So like, again, super big power card, and we're interested in seeing this power card. So, other power card, Cashin. It costs 4, so if you're really heavy on blues, which I lean a little bit into with this deck, you do sometimes just play it because you have to draw cards. But in reality, as an additional cost, you may instead sacrifice 4 copper or 1 gold. So it's like another payoff and similar to Blood on Her Hands, where you can sacrifice copper to have a power turn, or you sacrifice the gold off of your Crown of Dominion. And then it's draw 2 cards, which I will mention again. In the original build of my Skirmish second place, it was just trying to draw us more damage so we could have a bigger pop-off turn. Since, again, if every card in our deck is averaging like 3.5, this drawing 2 cards is like, it's a 1 card 7 with go again, if that's how the numbers kind of line up. But it also draws us into sideboard cards. If we know we're dead against Kano unless we draw Oasis Respite, we want more ways to see that Oasis Respite. If we know we're dying to an Illusionist without having a popper in hand, we want more ways to draw into a popper. So, Cashin, very good. Similar vein, I include this as a power card, Nourishing Emptiness. This is a new one that was not in my previous list, partially because I was able to pull it. It is a 2-cost red, 6 attack, 3 defense card, acts as a popper, but also, while there are no attack actions in your graveyard, which, spoiler alert, there won't be, Nourishing Emptiness also has Dominate, and if it hits, you gain 1 intellect until the end of the turn, allowing you to draw up to 5 cards. Drawing up to those 5 cards, plus maybe a card in Arsenal, allows you to play with a 6-card hand. So as opposed to Cashin letting you put up cards now, Nourishing Emptiness puts you up cards later, and it acts as a popper, and it draws us into our sideboard cards or into our Cashins, which is another thing that I really like about these as power cards. Something that's very strong about other decks is that they get to run like Art of War, or they get to run Belittle Minnowism. They get to run these other consistency cards. And the biggest thing, especially about Art of War, is that Art of War begets more Art of War. It allows you to dig 2 cards deeper to see your second Art of War. Cash In lets you dig 2 cards deeper into seeing your blood on your hands, your Nourishing Emptiness. Nourishing Emptiness lets you dig deeper to see your Cash In or your blood on your hands, or your sideboard cards. So having these be our power cards is very, very huge, and part of the idea of what's currently in this deck right now. So those are our power cards. Next up are like the Kassai staples. Like these are very much Kassai staples, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them. Spoils of War, +2, go again. Whenever we hit, we get a bunch of copper, which allows us to spend copper on all of our other cards. Glint the Quicksilver, very good blue. Target weapons gains go again, and then on the reprise, we get to draw a card. Again, we're drawing cards to get more cards that either draw more cards or to get our sideboard cards. Very, very big. Then another very big Kassai staple, we run the full Rainbow of Blade Runner. It's going to give, as a reaction, give our weapon go again, and then we're going to be able to get extra damage on the backswing. And then just because we want more copies of Blade Runner, we also have to run through. These are, like, no matter what build of Kassai you're doing, you're running all of these cards and all of these numbers. Just very good cards. Not a whole lot to talk about there. Next up are the pseudo Kassai staples, I'll call them. If you're hard-pressed to not run them, because they're just good. They're just good cards. So, for example, Red Slice and Dice. It's only damage. When you play it, your first sword will get +1, and then your second sword is going to get +3, so it's 0 for 4 with Go Again, which is it's just a very good card. It's just a very good rate. It's really hard to argue with that. But notably, it's not Go Again, and it's not a reaction, so it's just damage, but also just playing damage is good. Outland Skirmish, I'm only on the reds of right now. I keep going back and forth on wanting to run the blues and the yellows, because getting that copper is huge. It's huge for being able to threaten the blood on your hands, threaten the cash-ins, and just have them accumulated in that capacity. Just on the reds, because they're the best rate for damage, and if you think about that copper being even just a +1 off of blood on your hands, it's also kind of a 0 for 4 if you really squint at it. So it still fits in that sort of capacity, but I like running. I was on the blues for a while, I was on the yellows for a while. It's, again, numbers keep massaging around, but those are the only ones I'm on in terms of those pumps. Reactions that I'm on. Out for Blood, very good with Kassai. It's a 1 for 3 pump, but then on the reprise, your second attack will get +1, which now, even with the Refraction Bolters, you could follow up with, say, a Nourishing Emptiness. You could follow up with a Drone of Brutality out of the sideboard for that extra push, extra damage. And then we're also on the Punctures, because sometimes they're 1 for 4. If you use it when they block with an armor, very good. Just a very good reaction, and these are pseudo-staples just for the way they deal damage in the reaction step. A reaction that not a lot of people are on. These are a lot more of my techie slots that we're getting into right now. So, Stroke of Foresight. It's just a 1 for 3 that does not present any extra damage. Out for Blood gives +1 on the second swing. Puncture gives +1 damage when they block with an armor. But what it does is that because we're an aggressive Kassai deck, we are trying to push damage with our Royal package, with these power cards, we get our opponent into a state where they're incentivized to block a lot sooner, or we put them into a position where we're threatening the on-hit of our copper for significant damage. And when we get them there, Stroke of Foresight is another one of these draw cards. If they defend with a card from hand, you get to draw a card, take a card from your hand, and either put it on the top or the bottom. It allows you to, like, pitch stack a red sneakily without actually having to pitch a red somehow. It allows you to draw into your cash-ins, your blood on our hands, all that kind of stuff. Very like it, and it draws you into your sideboard cards. Again, drawing into sideboard cards is massive if you're able to have ways to do that. So I've been on the Stroke of Foresights. Always felt good. Maybe if people pick up on it, then it's going to just be 1 for 3 and it's not that great, but for now it's been very, very good. And now because I'm on the, I'm a lot more of the Royal package. I just want to have damage and my cash-ins to be live. I'm actually on Rainbow Hit and Run. So Rainbow Hit and Run is something that a lot of people sort of debate about. A lot of people are usually just on the blues because it's a blue for 0 for Go Again. But I'm on the Rainbow because now that I'm on Nourishing Emptiness and that I'm on Drones of Brutality on the side, Hit and Run can actually give us extra damage reach, where we use it before the second swing, getting that +3 bonus, and we actually have a follow-up attack, the same reason why I'm really liking Refraction Bolters nowadays. I'm thinking of maybe trying to put in different, messing around with other attack options to follow up with, but when Hit and Run is actually being both modes, it's so good. It's so much better than Sharpened Steel if you're actually getting both modes off of it. And in a pinch of when your hand does not line up super well, they are just your go again. They're 0 for go again, they let you do the thing, and they allow you to technically play with all reds, because it's a 0 cost for go again, pitch for the first swing, the second swing is free. It's not great, but it allows you to do that, and I always hate getting wrecked by drawing either all reds or all blues. If that's just the way I lose the game, it makes me very sad. And now the last 2 cards out of the 47 are going to be additional blues, because right now that's only 6 blues total that we're able to see. It's the Blade Runners, it's the Hit and Runs, and it's the Quicksilvers, so I just like having 10 blues. I really like knowing I have resources, and having extra blues means that, again, if you ever open extra blues, you can always block with a blue. If you don't open a blue, you sometimes just can't play your turn. So I always like hedging a bit on more blues. First up is one that people run pretty often, is Precision Pressed. It's just a 1 cost go again. There's like an argument for like Driving Blade, but that's like a 2 cost go again. So again, the Piercing one doesn't really come up. It's primarily just a blue, but if you need go again, it will give you that go again. And sometimes you play it for go again. And then the last blue that I'm running is 2 copies of blue Drone of Brutality. I've already leaned a little bit into it, but in the sideboard, I am on red copies of Drone of Brutality. And that gives us, in the, I guess, 52 total, we have 4 copies of Drone of Brutality, where you need at least 3 in order to be able to fully block an opponent Drone of Brutality. So if your opponent is trying to be like, I'm full fatigue, I'm going to just hammer you out, I'm just going to fatigue you out, you can be like, no, I'm going to negate that option, I am going to be swinging back as well. Do you guys enter an infinite stalemate eventually? Maybe, because you don't have super amount of consistent recurring block value. But if your opponent is just trying to, like, for example, there are like Anathos and a Guardian, where they're not actually on drones, they're just like, oh, I'm just going to be defensive Guardian. If they try to get you into fatigue, you can just say no. And then sometimes, even when you just pitch the first drone, they just have to change their game plan because they realize it's not going to work anymore. So, and again, here's the other thing. They're also just a blue. Every hand you want to have just 1 blue. If you draw a drone plus another blue, you block with the blue that blocks 3, and you just pitch this one. The only instance where the block 2 is like really bad is if you get both drones in your hand. And if that happens, it is a bit of a feels bad, but I think the upside of having game into those super heavy fatigue matchups is super big. Again, this is one of my like techs, one of my things I'm really trying to do it. So if you have any ideas, leave a comment in the comments down below of what your thoughts are. So this 47 card list, which means we have 3 cards we always need to bring in out of our sideboard. And due to the lineup, we have 7 cards in our sideboard to sort of flex with. So I'll get into like the standard loadout. If your opponent's like, I don't know, playing like incredibly fair, one of the big cards that always be sort of existing is Iron Song Response. It's just a 0 for 3 off the Riptide. It's good to sort of always bring it in to fill in that last slot. And then it's the Sink Belows. Sink Below, love the card. Allows you to allows you to cycle through your deck, allows you to draw cards, allows you to see your power cards more. And unlike other Kassai lists, because we're on the Royal Package, we don't want to be on Fate for Scenes as well. If we're on too many D-Reacts, if we ever cash in, draw 2 D-Reacts, we are super sad. We are super sad because we're not pushing extra damage. It's not actually a power turn. We can only arsenal 1 D-React, keep the last one in hand, and we're only drawing up 3 more cards anyways. So only 2 D-Reacts for that reason, but this is the best one. It lets you cycle cards. Super good. So if they're like, you know, like a ninja or just anything sort of like normal-ish, bring these in. Last 4 cards are going to be the 2 Oasis Respites that I kept talking about. Brought this in against Benji, bring this in against Kano, bring this in against anybody that's dealing you unusual damage that you don't have good ways to defend against. And then the last 2 Drones of Brutality. It is a 6-attack Illusionist Popper that does not mess with our Nourishing Emptiness. It is almost critical that we want our Nourishing Emptiness to be a power card, since we need it for one of our power card options. Out of the whole 40 card deck, we will have 5 cards. 5 cards that are power cards. So when we're drawing 4 cards deep a turn, we're trying to get a power turn at least by turn like 2, maybe turn 3. Again, sometimes you blood on our hands with only 2 copper, and you just have to make it work, because Blitz, it's still fast. It is still fast, and we are also a very aggressive deck. So this is what I'm currently messing in with the sideboard for right now. I really want to make this Iron Song Response something more impactful. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I don't know if I should tech in another react. Again, I don't like how the numbers line up. I don't know if I should bring in like a 4th popper necessarily, because again, in the illusions matchup, we're saving Nourishing Emptiness as a popper anyways, but this has game against fatigue matchups as well, which is why I bring it in. I was thinking about maybe having actually yellow Oasis response respite in here as well, just as like another defense option as opposed to the Iron Song response, but I wanted to have something that felt almost standard-ish. Because, for example, each of these very obviously pair up 2/2/2, and then it's like, what's the last one card out of a 47-card list? Goes to 49, just Iron Song response. So, thinking about bringing something in there. But that is going to be the Royal Kassai deck list for week 1 of Skirmish Season 7. Again, got 3rd place right now out of 20 players. Going to try to see if we can keep pushing that number up and up, see if we can get 2nd, see if we can get 1st, and see how much we can experiment with this sideboard. I know LSS said it's an experiment, that they're not going to be keeping it, there's probably not going to be keeping it permanent. If it became its own separate format, I don't think it would survive, because Blitz and like Sideboard Blitz would be so similar, people would only want to support one. There'd be no reason for both to exist. So my hope is that sideboarding does stay permanent. I think it's a very good change. I think it's going to be very exciting, especially when more and more people are experimenting with sideboard options. If you're a Dash player, let me know if you can sideboard Pistol Dash and Blitz. Tell me if it is time. Hybrid Dash, let's go. But again, that's just what we're trying to figure out. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the deck profile. Give it a like if you did, don't if you don't, subscribe if you can, leave down a comment. What are your Kassai ideas? What are you hyped for about Skirmish Season 7 sideboarding and anything like that? So, as always, I wish you guys absolutely wonderful. Hope you guys have an amazing time, and as always, please take care. Bye-bye.